Okay, after a long and tiring discussion yesterday about the kit from Cyrene that is rumored to be released in version 3.7. So, in this video, I will express my personal opinion about this character. Why? Why do we have to discuss this character again? Isn't this character mandatory to be pulled? Wait a minute, it's not that easy, guys. Indeed, if you've listened to everything I've described in the video, obviously you will agree that Cyrene is a support character who, well, has a myriad of effects. And maybe even the effects are quite difficult for us to remember because there are too many effects. But even though this character has the potential to be a future meta support, in my opinion, there are several reasons why this character is not completely required to be pulled in the next version. So, without waiting any longer, I'm hsrguide and we will go straight into the video. Let's do this. Do you have a character or weapon in the game that you really want but you don't have enough stellar jades? Here is a smarter way to recharge your favorite games like Genshin Impact and honkaistarrail. Look no further than Lootbar. Lootbar is the most reliable top-up platform. It saves up to 23% for all orders compared with the official channel, and it provides an 80% off for your first purchase. It's 100% safe as you will only be using your UID. We will buy pack for 3000 stellar jades for $42, which otherwise would have costed $50. Totally saving $7.5. We received the crystals we purchased in the less than 3 minutes. All recharges will be done through the official channel with miHoYo, which allows you to enjoy all top-up offers. Ready to level up your gaming experience? Check the link in the description to get the amazing discount. Before we go any further, let's try to refresh the Cyrene kit first. Broadly speaking, Cyrene is a unit that focuses on providing support to other characters, especially characters who have a remembrance path or characters who are included in Crisis Heir. One of the most prominent buffs lies in her skill section, which can give all allies a true damage buff of 20%. Best of all, this buff has no time duration. If Cyrene enters the ripples of the past reverie granted through her ultimate, well, it means in other words that this buff is a permanent buff that will be active during battle. The most interesting thing is the true damage buff of 20% can still increase again. You know, if we have her Eidolon too, this buff will be increased 2 times or by 40%. If we compare the buff that RMC can give, it's clear that this buff is much superior, where RMC can only give true damage buff to one ally, and the multiplier is only 28%. In addition to the cool buff just now, Cyrene also has a passive buff that comes from her talent, where when she is on the field, Cyrene can give an increase in damage dealt to all allies by 20%. Really cool, isn't it? Not only that, even though she is a character who tends to provide support, this character also has an offensive side that I don't think we should forget. Cyrene has a buff that can increase the ice resistant penetration according to the speed we have. If we have 240 speeds, then we will get a bonus of 120% ice resistant penetration increase. Interesting, right? Now we are going to get into the segment that all you may have been waiting for. Who is this character for? Well, if you listen to what I have discussed in the previous video, of course you know that her kit can function optimally if paired with Remembrance Path and also the character of Crisis Heir. Because Cyrene has a very special buff and has different effects when paired with each Crisis Heir character, such as Cyrene, Finan, Hyacinth and others. But honestly, I personally think the buffs given to each member of Crisis Heir aren't as cool. So there are some that are good, and there are some that seem ordinary. If you ask me which buffs for Cyrene are pretty good, some examples include Cyrene, Hyacinth, Finan and also Evernight. You can say that Cyrene has made a pretty extraordinary impact on these characters. For example, for Finan's buff called Ode to Word Bearing, which will give a critical rate increase of 16%. And will give him an extra turn when his transformation mode runs out. To make it even cooler, after launching an attack, it will give an additional 5 fire damage of 30% of Finance attack to one random enemy. Well, I personally think this buff effect is one of the cool ones that Cyrene can give to the members of Crisis Heir. So, obviously if you are a big fan of Finan, then Cyrene is a very strong candidate to take on the next version. But unfortunately, not all the buff effects from Cyrene have the same value. Some other effects seem ordinary. We can see an example of a special buff for Mighty, which is called Ode to Strive. When a special buff is given to Mighty, Mighty will immediately use a skill called Godslayer Be God, and will get a 60% increase in critical damage when in Vendetta status. While if not in Vendetta status, Mighty will only get an action advance of 100%. Honestly, in my opinion, the effects for Mighty look quite ordinary and seems too basic. Even though you can say Mighty is one of the DPS that is quite okay, can provide a large damage output and is easy to build and can be used by anyone. The next example is the special buff for Hsrguide. When a special buff is given to Hsrguide, the character who gets the military merit status will get a 30% increase in critical damage, and Hsrguide will get an additional 1 charge. Yep, as you can see, although this buff actually gives an increased damage effect to characters who have military merit, but in my personal opinion, the buffs given are really minimal. A 30% increase in critical damage feels quite low, considering that the military merit buff itself can already provide a 72% increase in critical damage. So yes, it means the Cyrene buff is actually weaker than the buff owned by Hsrguide herself. Oh yeah, here I will also make a tier list that I made myself about special buffs that Cyrene can give to members of Crisis Heir. Just like I said before, Cyrene's special buff doesn't have the same value for each member of Crisis Heir. So, if you only have characters that might be in the lower tier, then Cyrene will have a lower value for that character. And maybe there are some of you who also want to ask, what about characters outside of Crisis Heir? Is Cyrene also good and can be paired with other meta characters? Well, the answer is of course guys. However, the effectiveness of this character will decrease drastically, because the special buff effect that is the signature of this character will disappear, and Cyrene will become a universal character in general. Plus, even though Cyrene is able to give the true damage buffs to all characters, the true damage buff is less noticeable if you use it on hyper carry team, because the damage generated by supporting character other than characters with DPS role will be less. Okay, now we get into the part that you've been waiting for since the beginning of this video. Is Cyrene required to be pulled on version 3.7? Well, with the uniqueness and potential she has, I have to say that she is a character that is very worth taking on in the next version. Although I have to say that this character has a big weakness that may not be answered at this time. What is it? That is potential. Yep, indeed this character is a character who has a good kit at the moment. But she has the biggest weakness in terms of restricting the use of her buffs, where her buffs can only be maximized with characters who have a path remembrance or characters who belong to the Crisis Heir. So, if Hoyoverse doesn't plan to release a new character who has a path remembrance in the near future, then the potential of this character won't develop well. Plus, there are rumors that in version 4, there will be only one remembrance character that will be released. So this will make the potential of this character seem to be confined in the remembrance limit and also Crisis Heir, where on the one hand, the members of Crisis Heir cannot possibly increase, right? Of course, this will remind us of the Super Break meta that was released in the last version, where the Super Break meta only applies to characters that have Super Break potential. So, if there are no new Super Break characters, then the Super Break potential will still be a meta will have a little chance. Quite sad indeed. But if you are diehard fans of Cyrene, it doesn't hurt to still take this character in the next version. Because even though this character has some restrictions, she is still very worth picking up because some of her kits are still quite universal. Especially if you plan to take Idol's 2 for her. The true damage buff is up to 40%. Which is very good buff and should not be underestimated. So, what do you think about this character guys? Do you still intend to take this character in the next version? Please type in the comments down below, and don't forget to check out my other videos because they are no less cool. Stay safe, stay healthy, and see you in the next video.